Never been the easiest to get this close. How my emotions stay focused to what's important. Helping others, that's my trouble. Even worse to let go. I've been hurt so much it hurts. Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Philosophical from the Let's Rap podcast. Welcome to Philosophical Thoughts, episode 3. Today we have an illustrious guest, Mr. Keon Mccoy. It's such a blessing to have him on today. It was some things that, I didn't know myself. And just by reading his Facebook post over the last week, it kind of brought us closer as far as being able to speak and talk and have a good conversation. And that brought me to today's title as far as thoughts of a man that needs counseling. And my perspective and kind of feeling on this is that, a lot of times we talked about it on the show, just overthinking and kind of overanalyzing life in general. A lot of times, as me and Keon spoke before the show, going through situations where we feel like we don't deserve it. So we feel like something's wrong. We feel like, we don't deserve what we have in our life when God has put, such a great abundance in our life, but it's very hard to understand and process that. So that's kind of some of the things we're going to talk about and hear some of Keon's story. Welcome, Mr. Keon. I really, really appreciate you coming on, taking the time with me today.
Oh, no doubt, man. No doubt. I appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, man. No doubt. Always. So let's talk about, the post you kind of put out. We'll start there. What was your feeling kind of putting out that post? Kind of describe and tell everybody what in your words that post and your feeling on it.
Yeah, man. So in the moment of putting that out, it was just kind of one of those, moments to where I felt led by the Holy Spirit to just kind of share a very vulnerable part of me. I really feel that God has me in a part of my life to where, as I'm transitioning and working my way back and strengthening my relationship with Him, to where He's teaching me in the midst of, this season that I'm in, to be more vulnerable about what I'm feeling, and more vulnerable and open about sharing what I've gone through, and what I'm feeling. Because, in prime example was when I shared it, and I noticed the comments that were being left on, or even the few that decided to share it. I saw that, in that moment of transparency, even with that one post, people were being touched by my openness.
Do you feel? Let's start there. Because I feel like, you spoke on a vulnerability, which, social media is a way of vulnerability. So you putting your feelings and that vulnerability out there like that was kind of the first step of just saying, hey, I've been through what you've been through, men, but also, I'm here with you.
Right. And see with that, so first and foremost, and I'm sure you can attest, you could kind of with vulnerability and social media, you can kind of play Russian roulette a little bit,
Correct.
Whereas, someone can easily flip the moment of vulnerability and play it against you.
That and kind of, like, I'm not talking about me. Or like, this is about,
or even, or here he goes putting his sob story out here again. You know what I'm saying? So
correct.
But I was truly comfortable with doing it because I really felt strongly that God was leading me to do that. And I felt that however the turn out would have only been His will anyway. But even with that moment of transparency, I saw it as a opportunity to, help both men and women alike.
Correct.
You know, women in the aspect of seeing that, you know, men really do take the time to really meditate and ponder and think and even hurt from the things they go through. That we're not just all, you know, big dog, tough dog, acting like we don't have any emotions. We really do.
Yeah.
You know, and then the flip side, you know, it was an opportunity for any of my brothers that, you know, that are following, or, you know, someone that may be following someone else that shared it, you know, to see that, you know, that man, this man going through what I'm going through, he's able to be vulnerable and share his testimony also. You know, to whereas you may not be at that level to be able to share, but you can read what I've gone through or read what I'm dealing with, and see that you're not the only one, you know?
Yeah. And do you think that's the hardest part for a man? I think it is sometimes, because
What, vulnerability?
Vulnerability, yes, that's one. And two, being able to call your brother and say, "Hey, look, man, I need help."
Absolutely.
I feel like that's the hardest thing in the world for men. I feel like,
so it's funny you say that. Like I literally just got back off the road from Savannah, Georgia. My uncle got married yesterday, and I was talking to two of his friends, and that is just crazy because we were just having general conversation and somehow transitioned into that aspect of things. To where it is, man, it's a huge problem with men to feel comfortable with consorting help, you know, or advice from other men. You know what I mean? Because we have to have this mentality and this feeling that, oh, I got all the answers, you know, because since we were kids and even and since our fathers were kids and before then, you know, men have always been programmed that, you know, I have to take care of everything, you know, that I have to be the man, you know, I have to suck it up and take everything I'm going through and just make sure I'm providing and things like that. But when you're so focused on that aspect of life of being the quote unquote provider, you know, you lose the aspect of what you're called to be as a husband. You lose that aspect of being a comforter and you know, a lover and a friend for your significant other. You know, and in those moments to where as we consort with each other and practice that vulnerability with each other, that actually opens up a whole nother door for us to be able to love our wives the way we're called to. You know what I mean? So like, he had a buddy, and like I said, I won't disclose names or anything like that because he's not on here. But I had a buddy. So my oldest son, right, is not my biological son. I've been in his life since he was 3 years old, so he's my son. I do not use the word stepson because that's my son. His father wasn't involved in his life really. His father passed away when he was 6, but his father wasn't involved in life before then. I was more so doing everything when it came to him, even being overseas in the military. You know, I was still doing more for him than his father was living down the street from him. But even in that aspect of before his father died, I was very adamant on, you know, making it so that we all had a hand in raising my son, you know, because I didn't want my son to think that he had to choose between me or his father. I made that very clear in the beginning. It's like, yeah, I'm here for you and I'm your dad, but that's your dad too. You know what I mean? And he was saying how he had a problem. My uncle's buddy was saying how he had a problem with, you know, his ex-wife, and I guess her significant other now, and she was making it hard for him to even try to have any type of working relationship with the other guy in the picture, which that shouldn't have been, you know. But the only reason why I brought that in is because he was able to have a lot of weight relieved off his shoulders because me and the other gentleman, you know, we were in a point in our lives to where we value the opportunity to love on each other as men. So we were able to be there for him in that moment, you know, and offer some advice, especially me, you know, raising a stepson, and then the other guy coming from an aspect of raising a child, you know, in a separated household. So we were both able to feed into that. But if we would have had that mentality that most men have, to whereas that we believe that we can't feed into each other or be there intimately for each other, then he wouldn't have got that freedom. You know what I mean? And it's sad as society associates intimacy with, when it comes to men, intimacy with other men to being a sense of homosexuality, and it's not.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Or being weak, and it's not at all.
Yeah, and it's not. And it's not, because there's this cliche that I feel like is very big in society, right? Yeah. A man is only as strong as his woman behind him, right?
Yeah.
So why is it never mentioned as far as a man is as strong as the brothers behind him? You know what I mean? Why is it that a lot of times society has programmed us and teach us that, a man is the head of the house, but a woman, and I'm not saying that's not the case in all situations. And by all means, the way you run your household by a measure of success is your business. But right. I'm speaking to the people that, to the men that don't have a direction, that don't know where they're going, that don't know where they're taking their family. They're at a point where if my next move can really damage not only me but my family. So that's the weight on the shoulders that it can really hurt a man's psyche, right? So I look at it like it's just, I feel like we as a society put so much pressure on men to no room for failure, no room for just, if you fail tomorrow, you're nothing. You're nobody. You're no way to get back up on your feet, right? So I feel like you expressing your story and a lot of men just sitting down and kind of by themselves and kind of overthinking and things like that. I feel like it's just one of those things where it's like we as men aren't as strong knit as just being able, even sometimes on the podcast, being able to have men improvement is always this thing where, and we do it too sometimes, but as far as encouraging men on how to do better with women, right?
Right.
And as far as women being able to do better with men, right?
Right.
There's always this close-knit family between women can call each other and, have conversations. They bring each other up, whether that could be positively or negatively. But this man, us as men, is always this, we have to assume, we have to struggle. We've got to be in a place where it's like, if I don't do this in the next 10 minutes, I'm a failure.
Right. That's because we got that masculine, macho masculine mentality, man. Correct.
And it's always this where, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but where society teaches us that, if we act a certain way, even the whole thing with the red pill, blue pill, purple pills, things, if we act a certain way, if we're not a beta, if we're not this, if we're so masculine, it results in the most beautiful women. You get this type of result, right?
Right.
But it's one of those things that, what do you value as a man?
Right.
Are you going to value your peace and mind? And we've talked about it on our podcast to where relationships are turning into women and men aren't willing to be patient with each other anymore.
Yeah.
It's becoming harder for men to be vulnerable with their significant others, which in turn, I feel like, they're not being vulnerable. We're not being vulnerable with each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like you back in the day, you know, like, I mean, and even still a little bit today, like, what happened to just going out and like, yo, let's go talk, man. Let's go to like out to eat as brothers and talk.
Yeah.
Like, how's the family? How's the wife? What's going on? Because no matter how perfect a situation is or relationship is or marriage is, or, you know, you're single, there's always work to be done. You know what I mean? And you can't do it by yourself. So I feel like, I don't know, and I haven't quite narrowed down like why is there such negative stigma on us as men having a conversation.
Like I said, to me, it's all associated with the confidence in your sexuality. Like I said, I feel like that, you know, from beginning of time, you know, it was such a major thing and such a horrific scare. And I'm speaking from experience, man. Like I have this subliminal fear of having to deal with the homosexual spirit on my sons, right? So it's like, as a dad, it's like, you know, of course I'm gonna love my children regardless, right? But it's like, as a dad, you always, time to time, you'll have a thought cross your mind. It's like, man, what if my son grows up to be homosexual? You know, what if I have to have that conversation with my son to where it's like, yo, dad, I like men. You know, where, and so it's like, now I have to make sure, it's like I get so focused on that and lose focus on what God's calling for my family is, and what I've already prayed into them, that I start to lean on the masculinity of my flesh. You know what I mean? And I feel like that has played so often in so many men, you know, that you feel like you have to instill this serious macho, you know, mentality into your boys. Your children, period, really, but your boys specifically. Because since we're talking about men, but
it takes that emotional element out for a man to, for a man to care
away from the man, to where you're programmed from day one to be a specific way. It's like, all right, in the military. For us in the military, when we come to boot camp, you know, we have so many people from different other areas. You have guys and women from, you know, West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, other countries. We have people from suburbs, people from the projects. We have people with so many different mentalities, but then what their job is to do is to break you down and to build you up to have the same mentality. So now you're what we would call, when I was in the Navy, we call it Joe Navy. Joe Navy is somebody that did everything strictly by the book in the Navy. So they'll build you into Joe Navy, right? So it's that same aspect when it comes to
same aspect with
men.
society.
Yeah, man. Like when you're born into this world, man, you're born day one. I mean, how many times, I know I've done it, you know, and I know my dad has done it. How many times have we as men, you know, when your son falls and scrapes his knee at 2-3 years old, you come on, brush it off. You all right? Come on, son.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you think you're displaying your love and teaching him how to be tough, but really those are key moments to where he needs that intimacy to see it's okay to cry. It's okay for dad to kiss that boo-boo on his knee. You know what I'm saying? Like, he needs to see that, you know? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I agree with that. But do you feel like
I was saying, one of the things that I'm doing, I do now is, and my son will come to me, man, especially my youngest, whenever he hurts himself now, and it blesses me, man. It convicts me so much, because even in my backstand stage, man, he comes to me all the time, and whenever he hurts his knee, his finger, he feels anything, man, he comes, Daddy, can you pray over this for me? You know, and he does that, man. And when I say, like, consistently, it don't matter who's around, consistently, Daddy, can you pray over this for me? Daddy, can you pray over it? And that blesses me, because that was something that my dad later on instilled in me. But see, me being the oldest of 5, I kind of came in the picture before my dad gave his life to Christ. So my dad, who's from, you know, Southeast DC, he had that mentality too. You know, it's still from his dad. You know, that, brush yourself off, you all right.
So that emotional, let me ask you this. That emotional behavior, right?
Right.
That sense of intimacy. Do you feel like we show that towards the quote unquote beautiful women, the quote unquote trophy women that, in the back of our mind may not treat us the same way, we need to be treated?
So
Meaning that why do we treat women this way, but when it comes to our brothers, it's like,
because we look at them naturally, we look at them as the weaker vessel, the lower lesser being. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, and problems, and I hate to keep going back to kids, but that to me, I feel like that's where everything leads. So you look, as I say, I'm a girl dad. I have one girl, 3 kids, but one girl, and she's my middle child. You know what I mean? And instinctively, regardless of where I am, what time of the day it is, I always act more intimately toward her naturally than I do my boys. You know what I mean? Because that's daddy's girl. You know what I mean? So it's same aspect, even though it's more intimately when it's other women versus your daughter. But when it comes to that aspect, we naturally treat women differently for 2 reasons. 1, because we naturally see them as a weaker vessel. And 2, because then you have to factor in that the society has also programmed out here, and dad or mom has programmed out here the playboy aspect, to where it's now I have to feel like that, I have to tell you everything you want to hear, I have to be intimate with you and lovey-dovey and all this to get what I want. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And like I said,
and that also adds pressure to a man too.
Absolutely.
That puts pressure on a man
because
too.
Now you have to maintain that. Which is why, but see, the thing about it is, because it's counterfeit intimacy, a lot of men don't know how to maintain a level of intimacy because it's counterfeit. You know what I mean? I'm only showing you that level of intimacy, like I said, to get what I want at that moment. You know what I mean? And even if a solid relationship is genuinely what I want, because I haven't been programmed as a young child to be intimate, as a man, it's very hard to maintain that level of intimacy. Why do you think so many marriages and relationships are hot and rock fire? The first, the
honeymoon period,
1 to 6 months in.
Yes, the honeymoon period.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But once you hit past that 6-month level, you done played all your cards. So it's like, dang, now what do I do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or even if it lasts during boyfriend girlfriend stage a couple of years, once you get married. How many marriages out here where the intimacy level in their lives are dead?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why? Because for one, as a husband, I don't know how to be intimate to my wife. I know how to provide, because we naturally are providers. Yeah. But I don't know how to be intimate. You know what I mean? Yeah. And providing as a husband is not intimacy.
It's not.
You know what I mean? And and it comes into not knowing the love language of your wife. You know what I mean? Like, how can I love on you if I don't know how you receive love, or how you want to engage with love? You know what I mean? Us men, as men, we look at it as like, all right, yeah, I'm a king in the bedroom. I can lay it down. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But that's
when
not,
a lot of times that's not a woman's.
That's not the intimacy that they're looking for. That's not even the true intimacy they're looking for. You know what I mean?
And sometimes in that situation, a woman wants you to just listen.
Exactly.
Or just hold wants you to be, just be there.
And see, and so this kind of takes us step into my moment of transparency on this podcast, which is that was a key part of a problem in my ex-marriage. So now, again, like I said, I told the beginning of how my father and my relationship is, and the intimacy level is so much different now than when it was at that little small part of our life. Even as a kid coming up, it was so much different because my dad had given his life to Christ. Now he was growing, and wasn't the man of God that he is now. But he was still a man of God. He was learning and growing and stretching. So my younger siblings had a more intimate version of him than I did. Now, don't get me wrong, my dad was never one of those, Joe Jacksons or even what's my man name? James off of Good Times. Well, he did his work.
Yeah.
It was never that. Now my dad was intimate with me. My dad would hug me and stuff like that, kiss me and stuff like that. But again, he still had that aspect of thinking that, he had to be tough at certain times and stuff like that. But whereas by the time my brothers and them had gotten to preteen, teenage years and stuff, my dad had grown so much in his spiritual walk that he was more intimate. So it was kind of taboo for me to be able to receive certain levels of intimacy because I wasn't used to it. Even though, he had given his life to Christ at a young age. I mean, at a young age in my life. But those very fundamental years of 1 to maybe 6 or 7, whenever he finally gave his life to Christ, were instrumental to my mental programming to how I'm supposed to carry myself as a man, even at that young age. So now, age 8, to 18, my dad is, displaying a level of intimacy that I wasn't familiar with. To whereas, and so even because of that, getting older, instead of embracing that intimacy, I pushed it away, which actually pushed our relationship away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
which from what I'm hearing from you, kind of pushed away kind of separated your marriage between you and your
absolutely
ex-wife.
Absolutely. Because see,
and if you don't realize that in your marriage, it's tough to understand that when you're out of a marriage.
Right. And see, so the enemy comes and attacks in so many different ways when it comes to that, man. So
that's the part where us as brothers, we're not talking about that.
Right. Absolutely.
We're not talking about that.
And when you have somebody holding you accountable, like really holding you accountable 24/7, it makes it very hard for an enemy to be able to pull everything on your eyes. So go ahead, I'm listening.
No. I'm glad you brought that up because that's where the accountability comes from, right?
Absolutely.
We're expecting women to hold us accountable, right?
Yeah, but that's not their place.
It's not their place. Their place is to nurture. Their place is to care. Their place is to be the spokes behind the behind the scenes for you. You know what I mean?
Now, don't get me wrong. Your wife is supposed to hold you accountable, yes, because she's your helpmate. But correct. There are levels to that also because, there are times to where she would need to go and vent to her accountability partners who are other women.
Yeah.
Because they can receive it better.
Yeah.
And she can receive it better, and vice versa. Because correct. There are some things that I've learned also. People don't realize, like, oh, yeah, you got men that want to be, macho, and I'm the only accountability partner you should have. And that's not true.
That's not true.
When you do that to your wife, you are actually destroying her spiritually because you have to realize that yes, she's in love with you, but because your relationship is more personal and intimate and more constantly in contact, there are moments that we have in our lives to where we may argue or, we both may say something bad to each other.
And what happens? What do you do when that situation happens? What happens? What happens when you're
maneuvering and working through? But now, because I'm telling you as your husband that I'm your only accountability partner, I could be genuinely coming to you with some word from God, but you won't be able to receive it from me because you're still connected to those things that we had in our marriage, and vice versa. You may try to come to me as my wife and tell me something that I need to hear, but I can't receive it, because I have this mentality that, I got everything under control.
Yeah.
And that hurts.
So, that kind of brings me to kind of my ending point. As Mr. Keon Mccoy has stated, these are the thoughts of a man that needs counseling. And, what does that mean, right? The counseling for my brothers. A lot of people see this as counseling as in therapy. When there's a problem, as far as a man always having a problem, he needs to go to therapy. He needs to go to counseling, right?
Right.
So when the real counselors are our brothers. And
Yeah.
and this is the way I look at it, right? There's this cliche statement to where closed mouths don't get fed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you never know what's going on in someone's life. But the fact that your words can help someone else's issues in their life, it brings a certain joy to your life.
Right.
That the fact that you're helping somebody else that's struggling because you struggled before. And
Absolutely.
it brings encouragement, and it brings life, and it brings a sense of improvement within yourself. Like,
Right.
wow, man, I can't believe I said that, or I felt that way. Or like, like if you're speaking to someone else that's, been to where you've been through, where it starts to make you think that, man, from this person that's in it worse than I am, it doesn't make me any better than them, but it makes me better than what I was yesterday.
Right.
To the fact
But
that I can
even with
help
the
this person.
accountability of another man, though, we as men also have to realize that we have to allow ourselves to be open to being held accountable.
Yeah.
You know,
you gotta be open to be able to listen too.
Right.
Yeah.
And be able to accept the real.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got a partner, if you got a buddy that's giving you the real, whether you want to hear it or not, you got to be there, and realize that however he's giving that to you, he's giving it to you through love and accountability, and not because he's trying to test your manhood.
Exactly.
And that's where we have to step off our pride pedestal, man. And we see pride played a big part in my marriage and how it played out. Because again, like I said, the lack of intimacy and like you made a note of it, of how so many people think like having to get therapy has something to do with, something being wrong. And that's not necessarily always the case. And even when it is, it's sometimes just kind of helping you rectify or, strengthen some areas where you may be weak in, and it's so often that it's associated with weakness. Again, like we said, with intimacy and being intimate with other brothers, it's showing a sign of weakness. When you think like, man, being going to a therapist, people associate with something that being mentally wrong. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I don't want to go to no therapist, man. I ain't crazy.
And then we confuse
See, the thing about it is,
we confuse intimacy with just we confuse intimacy with just the physical pleasure of sex.
Right.
When really, we've spoke about it. You got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to be vulnerable. You got to be able, and there's such this stigma where it's like, hey, I'm providing you with stability, your house, food, I'm paying for your car, I'm doing this, I'm paying your bills. Why do I need to communicate with you? Why do I have to give you that extra emotional, stability? When we as men, that's all we're programmed to be, is providers. And I'm learning that myself. And I'm glad you said that, because I feel like that separates me today from me yesterday. I was in a situation, a lot of times when my relationships didn't work because I only knew one way how to keep them, was providing and sex.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
So like now it's like when a man opens their eyes and there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's like you're required, and it's almost like God is molding you to be a different man, a different person. It's rejoicing, but it's also difficult. It's also a battle. You know what I mean? It's also a joyous thing to where you have a partner that's willing to be there and see you through it.
Yeah.
That's the most joyous part about it, because a real partner will make sure you're on the right course. It's up to you to stay on course.
And see, people tend to forget, man, that, when and it's even going to like friendship. So with me, man, I've always, prided myself on being a real friend, you know, a friend that was going to be there
Mm-hmm.
in the trenches for my homeboys, regardless. Like if it came down to fighting whoever I was going to be there. Like I've always prided myself with that because I always had whoever I had. If you was with me, I had your back. I don't care how many it was, you know. But the thing about it is, you know, being real men is so much more than just being there in the time of combat, physical combat.
Exactly. And I'm glad you said that, because being a real friend is calling that person, say, hey man, and you can probably attest to this. You have good friends around you. Have you ever gotten that vibe and that feeling when someone needs to be checked on?
Yeah.
You know, that
definitely.
vibe where it's like, man, I wonder, like, yo, I just called to see how you doing.
Yeah.
And you can tell in that person's voice that, you know, they needed that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There are sometimes I call my friends and be like, yo, man, I'm just calling to check up on you. I ain't heard from you in like 2 weeks, man.
Yeah.
How you doing? What's going on?
Yeah.
And we as men, we're not used to that. And it was
statistically, man, a lot of people don't realize that because again, when we think about stuff like suicide, right? Suicide is also
mental health is real. Yeah.
Right. And something, suicide is also something that we as a society and we as men attach to what we consider weaker vessels. Again, women or we're quick to say how homosexuality, you know, causes a lot of suicide, stuff like that. But in all actuality, if people took time out to look, statistics show that suicide happens amongst men more than anything. So that goes back to what you were saying. Yeah. Think of like we can't even count how many times, you know, somebody's life, a brother's life could have been saved at that dire moment. And somebody would have listened to the discernment and the Holy Spirit in there that they were feeling and be led to call. But because we're so focused on our masculinity and our pride, we missed an opportunity to keep someone from extinguishing their life.
And that person probably all they needed was a phone call to be like, how are you doing?
Yeah, that's all, man.
That's it. And you notice
feel somebody care.
Yeah, a lot of those suicides are done in secrecy. They're done in silence. They're done in a place where their determination is like, they don't tell anybody. They're not talking to anybody. They're not communicating with anybody until it's the last minute.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, man. Yeah.
So, you know, my thoughts on it is the thoughts of a man that needs counseling, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we as brothers, we've got to be able to break that mold, that the stigma that, you know, it's homosexuality to call another brother.
Right.
You know what I mean? That it's a show of weakness to the fact that, you know, you're not a man if you don't talk to your brothers, right?
Right.
Now, there's a difference between having somebody to talk to and someone accepting that, you know, that conversation. Those are two different things. Absolutely. That we'll kind of address later. But I'm here to tell you, you know, from my perspective and what I've gone through, as Keon has kind of spoken from his perspective and what he's gone through, that, you know, as a man, I was so sidetracked to feel that I didn't know how to love anymore, where to go, or how to get to a place where, meaning I came to my own understanding on what it should be. Right. And I ignored a lot of the signs. And even today, still, you know, a lot of times when I get distracted or lose focus, you know, a lot of times that's the devil working to the fact that he wants you to go back to the way you used to be yesterday, right? Meaning that we as men, we gotta uplift each other. We gotta encourage each other. This isn't a show of weakness. This isn't a show of homosexuality. This
Absolutely.
isn't a lot of times you hear a lot of men, you know,
That's what real men do.
yeah, a lot of times if a man made a statement, they're like, yo, how y'all doing? What's going on? How's everything? And you got some people that'll respond like, I don't want to talk about it right now. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we got to get out that phase. You know, as I've spoken before on Freedom Fridays, you got to free yourself from that thinking. Free yourself from that mindset because it is a mindset. As I said, there's no harm or foul in helping somebody else that may need your conversation. You know, every day I tell myself, I try to tell someone about who we are and what we're about. And each day that's someone that potentially could listen to me or anyone that's been on the show and say, yo, I've been there. A lot of times we as men, we come to this conclusion in silence. And we're so afraid to speak up on it. We're so afraid to reach out to a brother and say, hey man, or even any type of beef, like, hey man, apologize for what happened during that time, or like, hey man, I haven't talked to you in such and such a time. Right. You don't understand the impact that may put in somebody's life. You don't understand you saying, you know what, that grudge is so petty and childish that, I mean, we may not be friends or best friends or talk about it or talk forward, but at least you stepped up as a man and say, you know what, it ain't worth it no more. It's that grudge and that hurt that we have for each other. It's not worth it, man.
All right.
So I really appreciate Keon coming on the show with me today. You know, philosophical thoughts, man. Really, really, really appreciate it. Make sure you guys give him a follow. I'm gonna have his contacts down in the description. I really appreciate it, and we're gonna have him on a lot more. Really, really appreciate it again, Keon, and really appreciate everybody that's taking the time out for Let's Rap Podcast, Echo Chamber, Philosophical Thoughts. The segment has been a lot. It's been tough to be able to come out and be personal with you guys, and really love you guys, and thank you so much. Peace.